Putin thinks that he's winning because we've blinked, because we don't seem to have the courage, either politically or morally right now, to stand up and support Ukraine in fending him off and fending Russia off.
This is one of NATO's largest military exercises. It's not just U.S. troops that are on the ground exercising. It's actually 90,000 NATO troops exercising together to prepare for various contingencies, most notably to prepare for any sort of Russian incursion on NATO territory.
Today, every inhabitant of this planet must contemplate the day when this planet may no longer be habitable. Every man, woman, and child lives under a nuclear sword of Damocles, hanging by the slenderest of threads, capable of being cut at any moment by accident or miscalculation or by madness. The weapons of war must be abolished before they abolish us.
Okay, so the war is not going well for Ukraine. I've done several videos and I've talked about how this thing just needs to end. For humanitarian sake alone, when you have hundreds of thousands of dead Ukrainians, millions of Ukrainian families being left destitute, being left in ruins, severe poverty, refugees all over the world, this thing just needs to end. But NATO can't let it go. We've had years of propagandists, pro-Western NATO propagandists talking about the Russians are losing, the Russians are trash, Putin is sorry and doesn't know what he's doing, and the troops hate him. We've had all types of propaganda going on. Now even the propagandists are admitting that this thing is going terribly for Ukraine, and Ukraine is losing the war and losing it badly. All these magical weapons from NATO doesn't work, so now it's time to cope. They're coming up with all types of excuses. You'll see a lot of headlines. Oh, the Russians are using meat wave attacks. There's no evidence, no proof at all that Russia sends thousands of untrained, unskilled troops just to die against hard armored Ukrainian defense. No proof at all, but that's their excuse. Well, we only lost because the Russians used the meat wave. We only lost because the Republicans wouldn't send more money after they sent a ton of money already. So it's coping time. And it's very hard to accept defeat, and that's going to lead us into what we're going to talk about today. Madmen. We have madmen in the world, madmen in the United States, madmen in Europe, who would rather take us into oblivion rather than admit that NATO is extremely overrated, rather than admit what I talked about before. I talked about at length and in detail how NATO is a paper tiger, how NATO heavily relies on hype and propaganda in its own countries, convincing its citizens that it's so powerful. But in reality, the Europeans have spent decades de-arming themselves, putting their money elsewhere, mainly on welfare programs, socialism, and how the United States has gutted its own infrastructure, its manufacturing ability, sent it off to Asia, sent it to Mexico and other countries because these corporations want to maximize profits. But they sit here believing that they can wave a magic wand and everything will be exactly where it should be. The industrial capacity will be back where it was in World War II, which is false as hell. This was what happens when you de-arm yourself. You spend decades sending off factories and manufacturers to overseas facilities. So here we go. Macron, the president of France, is threatening Russia. We're going to look at what he said real quick.
There is no consensus today to send ground troops in an official, endorsed, and sanctioned manner. But in dynamic terms, nothing should be ruled out. We will do whatever it takes to ensure that Russia cannot win this war.
So we see this man. I guess he thinks he's Napoleon because he's talking about, well, we would rather send NATO troops on the ground in Russia. We'd rather fight Russia than just let Ukraine be defeated. See, here's the thing about Ukraine. Ukraine itself is irrelevant. Ukraine is merely an asset. The thing really going on here is the American empire is pushing its globalist agenda, and it wants to have countries like Russia and China subject, have them under its boot the way it has the Western European countries under its boot. But a powerful country like Russia with its own agenda, with its own culture, with its own identity, they're not going to submit to the American empire. So Ukraine is nothing more than an asset of the Americans, an asset to try to harm Russia, to try to create some type of problem with the Russians. NATO itself, they don't give a damn. The politicians in DC, they don't care about Ukraine. If they cared about Ukraine, they wouldn't sit there letting 500,000 Ukrainian men, a generation of Ukrainian men, die. They wouldn't sit here letting Ukraine be bombed into ruins while millions flee the country if they cared about the health and well-being of that country. But actions show that they don't give a damn. Ukraine is merely an asset of Washington, D.C. to use as a cudgel against Russia. And I hope Taiwan is watching because they're also an asset, nothing more than an asset of the Americans. But Putin responded to Macron. He told this man, look, if you're trying to go there, if you really want that smoke, you can get it. So we're going to look at Putin's response to France, and it's going to be in Russian, so I'm going to have to read it. I'm going to have to translate what he says. But let's take a listen. I want to stress it one more time. I've been saying it, but I very much want you to finally hear me and to deliver it to your audience in print, TV, and online. Do you understand it or not that if Ukraine joins NATO and attempts to bring Crimea back by military means, the European countries will be automatically pulled into a war conflict with Russia? Of course, NATO and Russia potentials are incomparable. We understand it. But we also understand that Russia is one of the leading nuclear states, and by some modern components, it even outperforms many. There will be no winners. And you will be pulled into this conflict against your will. You won't even have time to blink your eye when you execute Article 5. Mr. President, Macron, of course, doesn't want this. And I don't want it. And I don't want it, which is why he is here torturing me for 6 straight hours. So, yeah, those are Putin's comments. That's him reminding France that not only is Russia an extremely powerful nuclear country when it comes to nuclear weapons, they have more than anybody, and the yield of these weapons are stronger than even that of the Americans. I've said before that that same 2 missile is probably the most powerful weapon in human history. But these people sit here, get comfortable, get complacent, and they start believing that nuclear oblivion is a myth. It's not a real thing. It's not a real possibility because these men, these madmen, have become way too comfortable. And I don't know what the hell the French are thinking. Do they even believe in a conventional sense? Because Putin also said in some other components, they're way better than many. And when it comes to ground war, when it comes to logistics, when it comes to artillery, France will get wiped out over there, especially since they've been de-arming themselves for the last several years. So Macron and Putin made their statements, and these NATO countries quickly came out issuing statements saying, no, France doesn't know what it's talking about. We don't agree with this. We had Germany, we had the Poles, we had some of the other countries over there in Europe, and even the United States. All these countries said, we don't want that smoke. We're not trying to fight Russia. We're not trying to put troops on the ground in Ukraine. Let's take a listen.
But that is not what the German Chancellor agreed, and by midday a message had appeared on X which barely disguised his frustration. We agreed, he wrote, that everyone must do more for Ukraine, weapons, ammunition and air defence. We are working on it, but it is clear, he added, there will be no ground troops from European countries or NATO. Spain, Italy, Poland and the Czech Republic have since issued similar statements.
The only U.S. military personnel that are in Ukraine are associated with the embassy as part of the Defense Attaché office, and they're doing important work in terms of helping us with the accountability of weapons and systems that are provided to Ukraine. The president's been clear, there's not going to be U.S. troops on the ground in Ukraine.
So here you are, NATO, the most powerful organization, allegedly, as they tell their citizens, and as many of these citizens believe, the most powerful organization in the world, backing down against one country. We got 30 of these countries running a proxy war. They're sending Ukrainians off to die for them. They want to instigate this thing between Ukraine and Russia while they hide behind Ukraine and cower. but keep talking themselves up about how powerful they are. But like I said, some of these people over here in the West, a lot of these citizens in the West are extremely confident. A lot of people in the United States have completely drank the Kool-Aid and believe they're completely unstoppable. And these people are lunatics. These people really want World War III. So we're going to look at some comments from a CNN video about Macron's statements and look at how crazy these people are. First, let's just listen to Macron one more time.
There's no consensus today to officially send support and to take responsibility for troops on the ground. But as things develop, nothing should be off the table. We will do everything necessary so that Russia cannot win this war.
Yeah. Like I said, the man thinks he's Napoleon. So let's look at some of these comments. This is what we need. Someone with guts to declare the inevitable. Ukraine has fought with one arm tied since the beginning of this war. They've not asked for troops from other countries, just equipment and ammunition. I don't know if they've been listening to everything Zelensky said. If Europe sends a strong message to Putin that they would not stand by and watch Ukraine lose, then they should make their position clear. Now or later, Europe and the US will be involved. Wow, French really gained my respect right now. So we have a lot of keyboard superheroes on the internet right now talking a lot of trash. They will never join the military. They're not trying to go over there and fight. But they want to instigate things and they want to send NATO troops. A lot of these people want to send NATO troops over there to fight. And again, we're so far away from the height of the Cold War. And we haven't seen nuclear weapons used in our generation. We haven't even seen the arms race where you have nuclear weapons blowing up all over the Pacific, blowing up in space. So we've become softened to the idea that we can be wiped out in a nuclear holocaust. We always have these documentaries talking about the top 10 ways that humanity will become extinct. And they talk about robots taking over the world, some major disease, and aliens invading, or some super volcano. And I always say, these documentaries are wrong because the number one threat to human existence, it's not AI, it's not some aliens coming from another galaxy, it's humans using nukes. A nuclear war is the biggest threat to wipe out humanity. But again, these people aren't worried about that. They think that it would never happen. Macron had to say what he had to say, so kudos to him. Go Mac. I got a nickname now. Cannot be ruled out. Correct. That is a good strategy. All options must be on the table. What are the air defenses in Paris like? Yeah, good question, because Paris could easily be wiped out by the Russians. But again, these people are complacent. Mr. Macron is the bravest Western president. Full support his plan to send Western troops to Ukraine. You got some people, reasonable people like this guy, this is madness. And somebody also said dangerous game. About time the Allies step up to their promise in the Budapest memorandum. Yeah, this person never researched or read the memorandum because the memorandum talks about Ukraine being protected from a nuclear threat. Not that NATO would have to send troops on the ground to fight for them. Interestingly, all major powers cannot dare to face Russia directly, but all encourage Ukrainians to be brave and defeat Russia for them. Exactly, because these people are cowards, man. But there we have it. We get the gist of it. A lot of these comments have people just egging them on. Hey, good job, Macron. You tell them. We're going to send troops over there. We're going to start World War III. We're going to wipe out the Russians because we're so powerful. We're unstoppable and the Russians are trash and nothing will happen. But the Russians will be under the boot of the American Empire. These people are completely delusional. They will push us into World War III. And these madmen are only gaining confidence. We got warmongers like Lindsey Graham them saying, oh, let's go bomb Iran. Let's do this and that to China. Why don't we go bomb Moscow? We got these madmen, and they're encouraged by a bunch of lunatic civilians in their own nations saying, yeah, let's go do it. Let's go do it. These keyboard warriors are not willing to fight on their own. And these madmen are so naive, believing that we can be wiped out under a nuclear holocaust. But let me know what you guys think about this. Leave me your thoughts below. Share the video. Thanks for watching.